Eviction cleaners, what are some of the most horrifying things you find when cleaning out old tenants? So I get a call while I'm at a bar late Friday night from one of my tenants. Apparently they were alarmed at a decaying odor emanating from the unit next to theirs. I knew the guy living in it. He was really old, so my first thought is the guy had died or something and the smell was his body. I was too intoxicated to drive, so I had a friend give me a ride back to my place. I asked my friend if he wanted to come with me to check on the guy and he basically told no and that he didn't want to see a body. I told him to wait in the car for a few minutes, which he agreed to. Looking back on it, I really should have made him come with me. So I go up to the guy's door and knock a few times, yell, "Mr. Sherman, are you okay? I'm coming in to check on you." Of course, I get no response, so I unlock his door and head on in. The smell hit my sinuses like a brick in the face. I've gutted moose before, so I know a bad smell when I smell it. This was about the same smell, really. That is to say, it smelled more than enough for me to believe there was a body somewhere in there. Still, I had to make sure before I called the police. I didn't want to call them in on a week-old pot roast, or because the refrigerator was left open or something. So I went about exploring the apartment. I knew the layout already. Most of the units are the same, so I began to search the apartment room by room whilst holding my t-shirt over my face to keep myself from gagging. The living room, the first room you see when you enter, was surprisingly neat and clean. There were a bunch of books on the coffee table lined up in a neat stack, and the telephone was on the cabinet by the wall where it should be. Then I looked at the corner and reflexively let out a shit. And backed up. There was a dog staring at me. It looked like a little black terrier, the Scotty kind. It wasn't growling or anything, so I thought he was just scared. Then started laughing at myself for being afraid of it. It still wasn't moving. I was a little creeped out by how much time had passed and it still wasn't moving. I thought, nah, couldn't be, but sure enough, it was stuffed. The dude had a stuffed Scottish terrier in his living room. Weird. I was still in a good mood at this point, and had to chuckle to myself over getting afraid of a stuffed dog. I turned to my left and walked into the kitchen. The kitchen was a little bit messy. I could tell someone actually used this part of the apartment. There were just a couple knives in the sink, and the counter had some crumbs on it and stuff. I opened the refrigerator up, hoping to God that was where the smell was coming from. Nope, the refrigerator was completely empty. It looked like the guy hardly even used the apartment. There were almost no personal belongings in the living room or kitchen except for a couple plates that came with the place, and the weird stuffed dog in the living room. So I went back into the living room and holy crap, the dog moved. Actually, it didn't. There was a second dog behind the couch that I hadn't noticed the first time. Still, it almost gave me a heart attack. This weird guy had two stuffed dogs in his living room, both watching in different directions. Anyway, I worked myself up a bit and went down the hallway and checked a closet. Nope, empty. The smell was definitely getting stronger now. Next up was the first bedroom. The smell wasn't so strong in there, so I didn't think I was going to find anything. So I flick on the light in the bedroom, and it's pretty messed up. The mattress had been taken off of the bed, and the sheets were all torn up. There were a load of holes and scratches in the wall, which were at chest level, so they were most likely from punching or scraping with a knife. Most disturbingly, there was a load of red stains on the carpet. They looked a lot like wine stains. Remember, I was intoxicated, so blood was not the first thing to pop in my mind. It actually was blood. I was an idiot. All I remember thinking at this point is forget about the deposit. This guy is going to get charged. The whole experience of being in this apartment was starting to get at me though. Every room I went into I was half expecting to find a body, so I just wanted to find the source of that smell then get out of there. So I went into the bathroom and there was a fur carpet in there. Except it wasn't a carpet. It was like 20 different little furs all laid out on the floor. They were mostly brown and black, but there were a couple white ones. I couldn't tell if they smelled bad, but they were definitely not the main source. I went down the hall to the second bedroom, timidly muttering stuff like, "Mr. Sherman, are you in here?" I started out in a good mood, but after getting startled that hard twice in a row my adrenaline was going. It felt like a horror movie. Anyway, I went into the bedroom and sure enough, there was a body. He was lying face down on his bed with his knees on the floor and his pants off, butt cheeks bare and pointed straight at the doorway. I got out at that point and told my friend in the car what I saw. Of course, he didn't believe me until the police I called showed up. I never got to see the worst part. One of the cops told me about it. Apparently this dude was a veterinarian and had been taking home all the bodies of animals he'd put down. He had made a liking of skinning them all and just throwing them into the tub in the second bathroom. I guess the first bathroom was too good for that, so that's where he kept the furs. The worst of the worst part is that the guy passed from a heart attack while going to town with the insides of one of the animals. The deposit, $500, didn't begin to cover the damage to the apartment, let alone the emotional damage he did to me. Retired soldiers, what was something that you saw or experienced that you never shared with anyone? I was deployed to a place called the Triangle of Death in Iraq. We had been there for 6 months with a lot of intense fighting and were set to rotate to southern Iraq in a much less active spot. We were set to be replaced by the 502nd IR, part of the 101st Airborne. They had been a large part of the initial invasion of Iraq against Saddam's forces, but this was 2005 and was a much different war. When you transition units in the military, there is a period where you integrate, where you show the incoming unit your current operations. I happened to be at an outpost by one of two remaining bridges across the Euphrates River when this started. We tried to caution them, show them the ropes, but they didn't want to listen to any of us. They kept saying we have a destiny along with other hyper-aggressive statements. They didn't even seem to see the people here as human beings. They were just like, we're going to mess this place up. Across the street from this particular outpost was an Iraqi guy and his family who owned the small farm around the outpost. They had been really good to us, pointing out IEDs on roads as well as running and grabbing us food and supplies when we couldn't get any. For example, our supply truck was destroyed by an IED one time, so all we had were MREs to eat. We talked to the farmer and gave him a shopping list and money, and he bought us food at the local marketplace. He was a great guy and did stuff like that for us all the time. We took the 502nd guys on a foot patrol and the farmer came out of his house, greeting us as he usually did, making his way towards us. We waved and started talking to him. When he went to shake the hand of one of the 502nd privates, the private just hauled off and punched him in the mouth, shouting distasteful remarks. Our platoon sergeant restrained him and sent him back to the outpost with my sergeant and I to escort him while he tried to placate the farmer. We took that private to his sergeant, who congratulated him. When our platoon sergeant got back, he tore them a new one, but they didn't seem to care. I wasn't privy to the conversation between my platoon sergeant and his, but it didn't seem to have any impact either. Their attitude persisted until we finally left for our new location. They took the life of that farmer's family a few months after we left and did things to his daughter. As if this wasn't enough, a few months prior to this, I had been injured when my truck rolled over during a firefight. I was the gunner, maybe 200 meters from where the event took place. I had to be medevaced to Baghdad, where I recovered for a few weeks. When the truck rolled over, I lost my wallet in the dirt out there in what we called Iraqi moon dust, which is a powdery silt type soil you find all over. Flash forward to a week or two after the event with the farmer's family took place. I receive a package from Sergeant Green. It's my wallet, mailed March 12, 2006, the same day as the event with the farmer. I recognize it's highly unlikely it happened just like this, but I can't help but wonder if they found my wallet on their way to commit the act, or even if they mailed it just before it happened. I'm not a religious person, but I like to think that it was perhaps the universe's way of trying to remind them of the front seat, back seat period with our unit, where we had a simple message for them: treat people with respect and like human beings. It is all they want. I still have the wallet. It reminds me of the farmer and his family. I can't help but wonder if maybe we had been more focused on getting our message across to that 502nd group if this could have been avoided. Maybe we were in too much of a hurry to leave for safer territory that we neglected something that might have made a difference. Today I effed up by picking up a hitchhiker and then showing up to my own funeral. This happened a few years ago and I was living in Zimbabwe at the time, and I was having a pretty bad day. I was going to see my aunt who lived about 400 km away from me. If you're African, you'll understand that this was no small journey. So I got in my car and set off, and about 3 hours into the journey I came across a dude by the side of the road who was going in the same direction. So out of the goodness of my heart I said, jump in. We go to talking and he happened to be going to the exact same village as me and he knew my auntie. Half an hour passes and we're making polite chit chat and reminiscing about old times in Zimbabwe, when all of a sudden he tell me to pull over, so I do. He runs out of the car and starts making retching noises, so I assume he's throwing up. It's dark at this point so I can't really see much, so I go check on him. I get out and go to his side expecting him to be there, but he's not. Then I hear someone behind me and before I know it I'm unconscious. So I wake up a couple hours later without my car, clothes or wallet. So I'm thinking, great. I look around and see I'm on some farmland wearing the guy's clothes. So I start walking in no particular direction and eventually come across a settlement. I explain to them my situation and they tell me that the nearest main road is at least a good half a day's walk from where I am and they don't get many cars coming through this part, but they heard one last night. I start walking in the direction they point me in and after what felt like forever I come across a road, so I pitch up and start waiting. After a couple of hours a car stops and lets me hitch. I let him know the situation and he says we're in the complete opposite direction of my intended destination, but he's willing to drop me close enough to walk the rest of the way, to which I thought great. It takes a good 2 days to get there and he drops me off and I say my goodbyes to my driver. I take down his number so I can repay him later on. At this point I'm starting to recognize my surroundings. I walk for a few miles and as I'm getting closer to my auntie's I can hear lots of singing and what appears to be a large crowd, which I thought was strange. I'm about 100 feet from the house and I see my son, which again I thought was strange because he was meant to be in school at this time, but instead of running to me and hugging me as he normally does, he runs away screaming, to my complete bewilderment. I get to the gate and all of a sudden the large crowd, alerted by my son's scream, has stopped singing and has stood silent. My wife appears and starts to run towards me, hugging and kissing me like I've been gone for months. My auntie appears and immediately faints when she sees me. I still have no clue what's going on at this point and I'm exhausted, so we rush to get my auntie inside and I see my picture on top of a large box that resembles a coffin sitting in the living room. So it turns out that the guy who robbed me and made off with my car, my wallet and all my clothes was in a car crash so bad that they couldn't identify the body, and because the only things they could use to identify him was my wallet, they assumed it was me that had passed in the crash. Since there was no body of sorts, they could arrange the funeral pretty quickly, and that is what I had stumbled upon. My son still has nightmares to this day and my wife has told me never to pick up a hitchhiker ever again.